Well, good morning. My name is Lori Smith, Lori Ann Smith, I go by. That's my full name. I'm just doing a series of videos that are looking at the Survivor to Thriver workbook. And it's put out by ASCA, Adult Survivors of Child Abuse, a Morris Center program. And like I was saying on the last show, you can catch that if you want to. It's under my playlists under one child abuse survivor to another, the continuation. So that's where you'll see it. And the last show that I did was at the beginning, initial video for this series that I'm doing. And we covered just the basics of the first part of that manual. You can find it at ascasupport.org. And you can type into your browser if you want ASCA Adult Survivors of Child Abuse, and it'll come up. You can find it. The PDF, it's either you can get it as a PDF, you can download it if you want to. You can download it as a Word doc. You can read it online. It's a great resource for adult survivors of child abuse. I've actually used it myself, like I said, many years ago, back when I first started my healing journey. It was helpful, really helpful. But they always say, if you're just starting out on your healing journey, you need to do the safety first chapter. And I don't know, we might get there today looking at that. Safety first is really important. So, you want to know that you're safe enough to do this work on your own. If you are on your own, you don't have a therapist or a counselor, somebody who can help you to kind of, deal with these things, because they are very difficult. And so you don't want to go backwards and regress in your healing journey and, end up injuring yourself, hurting somebody else. It's really serious. You need to take it serious, and because, things can trigger survivors of abuse of any type or trauma. And so you just want to be careful, right? So we're picking up where we left off. I'm not going to repeat the last show. You can just watch that if you want to. We're looking at the next section, which was choosing a therapist. And that's really important. I don't have a therapist, but I know how to choose one. So if I was going to go get one, I would know what to look for, what questions to ask. It's just really important. So that's what we're going to look at this morning. And hopefully you can hear me. I had problems with my audio on my other browser, so I switched to my browser, and that sort of solved everything. So I don't have to wear my headset. So I'm hoping you can hear me. And if you can't, just type in the chat you can't hear me, and then I'll know. I'll put my headset on. Choosing a therapist. This is the next portion that we're going to look at today. And we might make it to the, like I was saying, the safety first info, but we'll see how far we get. So I'm reading right from their document. It's called the Survivor to Thriver Manual. It's like a workbook, and they don't mind people sharing this information as long as you don't change it or try to make money off of it. So I'm not getting paid any monies to do this. I'm doing this out of my own free time, and because I really care about people, and I just want to be one more voice out here for survivors of abuse, to get help and just to try to share resources with people. And that's really basically what I've been doing for since 2009. So I don't get paid for any of this work, and I don't monetize my stuff for that very reason. So they wouldn't mind me reading this on here, I'm sure of it. So choosing a therapist, as in any profession, there are therapists who demonstrate greater and lesser amounts of responsibility in their practices. Neither ASCA nor the Morris Center is in the business of evaluating individual practitioners. However, we encourage ASCA participants who are interested in individual and/or group professional therapy to select their therapists carefully. So do be an informed customer. Do ask questions about the therapist's training, experience, and licensure. If you feel comfortable doing so, ask about the therapist's theoretical orientation and what kinds of techniques or practices he or she uses in therapy, and to the extent possible, trust your senses. Like I was saying on the last show, we can, if we wanted to choose a therapist, we could always check and see, if they've actually dealt with child abuse, and if they've ever, had clients who were abuse survivors, and whether they have a knowledge base about child abuse and adult survivor issues. That's really important, because I've heard from many of my friends, I've got a lot of survivor friends, and I've heard from them that, they've gone to therapists that they didn't realize didn't have that training to be able to help an adult survivor of child abuse, and they wasted, basically 6 months to a year going to this person and found out that they didn't have that qualification. And so then they had to find another therapist. So I would say, find out if the therapist actually knows anything about child abuse and adult survivors of child abuse. Right? So important. I've got Cynthia here. Good morning, Cynthia. You too. I hope you have a wonderful day and a good week ahead. We'll just keep going. I keep plugging along. That's what I keep doing. Take it one day at a time. And but I think it's going to be a good day. I hope anyway for you. They said the current debate about child abuse memories and recovery often mentions repressed memory therapy. As a point of clarification, there is no such identified discipline. There are various therapeutic techniques, some are more reputable than others, that therapists may use in working with clients. Therapists may use these same techniques with clients who have no abuse issues as with clients who either know or suspect that they may have been abused. So the real key to competent therapy lies not in techniques, but in the expertise and ethical stance of the therapist. So once you've entered into a therapeutic relationship with a professional, if you feel yourself being pushed too fast or encouraged too much, or you are uncomfortable with suggested therapeutic models or methods, try to discuss your concerns with your therapist. If the therapist's suggestions don't feel right or aren't compatible with your memories, feelings, or beliefs about your abuse, then try to discuss this as well. You should be comfortable with the pace of your therapy and be able to discuss your progress openly with your therapist. An ethical therapist will never force you to engage in an activity or recovery technique about which you are truly uncomfortable. Ultimately, you are the authority on your own experiences. That's true. They're supposed to just be there to help, right? We're the authority about our past and about what we've been through because we know. Although your therapist is a professional and may possess knowledge and skills that you do not, you bear the responsibility of being an active participant in your recovery. So they said this isn't to say that therapy won't at times be painful and difficult, especially when working on deep-seated issues around child abuse. But there is a difference between your natural resistance to looking at and dealing with painful memories and the discomfort that arises when you feel that something is being suggested to you that is instinctively wrong or uncomfortable. And that's very true. If it makes you uncomfortable, you got to give it a second thought because it's obvious that something's not right. And you would know that yourself at the therapist's office, if they mention something or they suggest something that just brings uncomfortable feelings right away, you want to stop and think about that. Give it some time and really think if it's something that's going to benefit you or if it's something that might cause you more trauma, because that's what you don't want that, right? Nobody does. So it says if this happens and if you and your therapist cannot come to a mutually agreeable solution, then perhaps it's time to consider changing therapists. So I've heard lots of, like I said, many of my survivor friends out there over the years have said that, they've gone through a multitude of therapists and counselors to try to find one that actually, sort of syncopated with what they were, their challenges, and also with their methods, and it just worked for them. It took them time. It can take time. I've heard that. I myself never did the therapy route, really. Like I said, I've had, a couple of my friends were psychotherapists, and I've talked to some therapists, but not as a client. But I just didn't want to go the therapy route. But see, everybody's different, and we all have to make that choice for ourselves, And people would say, well, is it wrong? Do I need a therapist? It's like, that is entirely up to you. You know what I mean? I decided to go group support because I found that was helpful for me. It actually, it was what I needed. It worked for me. It doesn't work for everybody. Some people don't want to do group support, and they really would rather have a one-on-one connection with someone who can help them, who's trained and who should be trained. If you go to them, who should have the qualifications and have that, ethical and the moral standards to be able to help you and not cause you further pain and trauma. So this is the issue. If you find a therapist that's good, that's great. But if you don't find one that's helping you, just get another one. That's what I've heard so many survivor friends tell me. They've changed therapists many times. So it says, what about confronting my abusers? This is a big deal. Confronting my abusers. Like my abusers are, they're all passed on now. And So I've dealt with this is such an issue for people. I've because I belong to so many survivor groups, Facebook and mainly Facebook. Um, these actual survivor groups that you can join. I hear from so many people the issues about confronting abusers. It's a personal choice. Don't let anybody push you into or guilt you into or say that you will only heal if you confront your abuser. This is clearly only up to me. Let's just use me for an example. It's clearly only up to me if I want to confront my abusers. For some people, it would be very dangerous for them to confront their abusers because abusers are abusers. So even if they're old and stuff now, it's kind of like, well, my abusers, they were old, and it's not that I ever had to go back and confront them. They knew and they didn't apologize. They didn't care what they did. So it's kind of like, oh well. For me, it's a little different story. But I've heard many people who have been traumatized going back and confronting their abusers and re-victimized, and that's not good, right? I think it's up to the individual because all of us are in a different place. We all in different situations. We all share the commonality because we were abused as children in some form or fashion, some way. Um, but all of our stories are different, and all of our lives are different. We've all got different things going on. So it's clearly up to you whether you want to confront your abuser or not. And I wouldn't let anybody pressure me into doing anything like that. It should be something if you decided to confront your abusers, there would be a reason that you would decide to do that, and it would need to be something that you felt would be better for your healing journey, better for you in the long run. Like I've had people say, "Oh, you have to confront your abusers," and all this, and it's like you don't have to do anything. You know what I mean? You don't have to be pushed into doing anything, and don't allow people to railroad you and say because you think they have more knowledge than you do about this stuff. This is all such personal stuff. You have to go with what you're comfortable with. And so they even say here, this is a very difficult question. They said, and one that only you can answer for yourself. Step 18 of ASCA reads, quote unquote, I have resolved the abuse with my offenders to the extent that it is acceptable to me. For some survivors, this means an internal coming to terms with the abuse and the abusers, but does not involve direct confrontation. For others, it means direct confrontation, either face to face or by letter or phone. So for still others, it may mean writing articles, stories, newspaper op-ed pieces, or by speaking out in public gatherings. That's me. I just told it like it was. I'm like, everybody's going to know about this. And for still others, it may mean pursuing legal action to gain restitution for the abuse suffered. So every survivor is different in his or her need to confront the abusers. Neither ASCA nor the Morris Center has a policy or position on confrontation. Instead, we believe that each survivor must make each choice individually. So we do, however, encourage survivors to think carefully about their options and the consequences of their choices. And so that's just it. It's really important to, um, before you do something like that, to think about the consequences. Think about what that's going to mean, what that's going to do. If it's going to cause you more harm, you have to seriously think about whether that's worth it or not to confront your abusers. If it's going to bring you peace, you know, then you have to make that decision, right? So it is a big issue for many people, billions of people. Confrontation of any sort, and especially legal action, can be very disruptive to life in general and the recovery process in particular. The legal system is inherently adversarial in nature. So the objective evidence-based standards of proof required for either a civil judgment or a criminal conviction are not easily met by testimony relating to memory retrieval, or psychotherapeutic techniques and interpretations. So perhaps most importantly, the suing your abuser brings all of the old feelings of hurt, shame, guilt, antagonism, anger, and sadness that accompany the abuse to the forefront of your conscience. So you are likely to in effect to relive your abuse and experiences in court. For these reasons, we encourage survivors to think about, get information on possible consequences of various courses of action to weigh whether they are sufficiently grounded in their recovery to withstand the pressures and stress that almost always accompany a decision to pursue legal action. People have asked me if I ever took legal action. or if I would, I have some comments on here. I haven't got to all the comments yet. I'm trying to answer all the comments, but it's taking me some time because I don't want to just answer something like thanks, I want to really read it and answer it. And it's very personal to me. I appreciate all the comments, especially the encouraging, kind comments that make me feel really special, and I really appreciate it. And because I've never had this amount of support before. I had from friends, my own personal friends have given me a lot of support, but not so much from just from the from so many people. I'm like, wow, and so many survivors of abuse. I'm like, this is very special to me. So I'm going to answer all the comments. But I have had some that said, did you pursue, your abusers with, in court? Did you take legal action and stuff? And it's like my abusers were, when I was would have still been able to pursue legal action. I actually did not consider myself to be a survivor of abuse. I was just living this life that was just ridiculously traumatic and horrible. And I knew why. I've always held my parents accountable. They knew that because I used to tell them about it. I'd be like, look what you did look what you did. So I was trying to make them kind of take accountability, and they never did. And then they went to their graves. Even my dad was alive when I wrote the books. And when I wrote one, Life of Death and Redemption, that was my first book. It was a blog, and I just turned it into a book. But I actually had a copy, and I gave it to him to read. I showed it to him, and I said, there you go. It's all there. It's gone public, and it's a done deal. It's out there. The truth is out there. My dad was like, almost 90, and he was, he was mentally ill, and I didn't do it to hurt him, but I wanted him to know that I did write a book because my mom was already passed away. And, he never took responsibility, even though I wrote that book and stuff. He never did. So none of my abusers took responsibility. My brother, who sexually abused me, committed suicide at the age of 33 when I was 20. So I could have actually, before that, taken legal action, but I had actually pushed those memories down. I didn't want to deal with that stuff. And I went to a gynecologist because I was going to be getting into a relationship with this guy that I had met that I really loved. I fell in love with him, and I wanted to have a checkup because both of us had said we would have a checkup, so we'd make sure we didn't have any venereal diseases and stuff. It was just a promise to each other. And I knew I didn't because I hadn't been. I considered myself to be a virgin. I really did, and I put out that I was a virgin on the clipboard on my sheet, or my info sheet. And they did the checkup, and they were like, you're no virgin. Like, sorry, honey. Like, I'm really sorry what happened to you. You've been sexually abused. It's obvious. The scars are there, and if you want to press charges, you can. I said, well, I guess maybe I would, but my abuser killed himself. So he had killed himself the year before. So, at that point, I was just, whatever. It's just, it's not so much about legal action. I wanted them to take personal responsibility for what they did and just make it right. That was my thing. I always wanted my mom to just make it right, and my dad. So it wasn't necessarily about that. But for some people, it is necessary, and they do need to take legal action. And they do. And many times they win. And that's great. And I'm always happy to see it. I'm like, yeah, go, man. Because it's so horrific what this stuff has done to so many people. It's so wrong. And I still can't figure out why it's so much of it's going on. It's just a sheer level of ignorance. It's like, how can people do this to their children? Any of these things. I don't care what kind of abuse it is. I don't care if it's physical, emotional, psychological, spiritual, sexual abuse, like whatever, all the gamut of the abuses that go on against children. How could you do that to a child? Any of it, it's just wrong. And so, I'm just, I still shake my head all the time. That's why I keep speaking out, So I have Carrie Ann here. Hi, good morning. And she says, for me, it was about learning to self-love again. Absolutely. Absolutely. And it is so important. I work on this all the time. And I've had to, actually, because of what I went through. Periods of time I'll go where I don't think too much about it, and I feel pretty good. And then all of a sudden something will hit me and it brings me down, and I'm like right back where I was before, with the feelings of worthlessness, unloveliness. No, I don't count. I don't matter. I'm just garbage. And then I have to say no, no, and I have to negate all that again and go through the whole thing of no, that's not true. I love myself. And I even love my wounded self from so long ago. All those wounded children that I was through the years being abused. I love them too. That's me. Uh, and I've learned to really go through and love myself and reparent myself, re-nurture all the stuff I didn't get when I was growing up. You know, so important, right? So I have lots of people here now. I've got Wanda here. Hello, good morning, good day, wherever you're at there. I'm glad you could be here. And I got Laura from Ontario. It's almost getting close to noon there already. I hope your day is going well. And we're just looking at how to choose choosing a therapist from the ASCA, Adult Survivors of Child Abuse and War Center program, and they were talking about the issue of taking legal action, if how to confronting abusers, stuff like that. So that's what I was just talking about, and so I won't repeat it. But if you wanted to catch that, you can go back and check that out. So next part up here is the it's chapter 2, safety first. And this PDF, well, I'm using the PDF, but you can get this from ascasupport.org. Just go to their website. I'll type it in. Let's see. www.ascasupport.org. You can go there and you can grab this Survivor to Thriver manual if you haven't seen it before. And it's a great workbook. I've worked through it many times. I've actually been through it many times. I used it when I first started my healing journey, like back in 2009. It was one of the first things I got a hold of that really helped me out. And I actually joined an ASC support group later. But you can download this thing for free, and it's or you can read it online if you don't want the paper, or if you don't want to download it, you can just read it online as a web page. It's great, and it's so, I don't know, it's so inclusive. I really liked it. So I'm going through it page by page. I'll be doing this every Tuesday at this time, 9 o'clock Mountain Standard Time. I'm in Alberta, Calgary, Alberta, Canada. And so it's, I've got Laura Pinder from Oregon. Hello. And Carrie Ann says that she's in the USA, and is Canada more supportive of the victim? I would say not really. Not really. Canada is always they say about 50 years behind the States, which is really sad, but true. So the States is more proactive, always about 50 years ahead of Canada all the time on that sort of stuff. So up here, we don't even hear about stopping child abuse. It's very rare you see something about stopping child abuse. Once in a while, maybe once a year, you'll see something. There's not like in my area, there's very few groups and support groups for adult survivors of abuse, especially in Calgary. There's some in Edmonton, there's other in the cities, like some of the cities around Alberta, but Calgary's got very little. It's a huge city, like it's over 2 million people here now. Big city. There's lots of abuse. All the children's homes are full. All the domestic violence shelters are full all year round. But we never talk about it. It's never talked about. You never hear about it. It's very rare. So it's sad, right? But we're even in the States with what's going on in the situation, people are becoming more aware. The issue is that children are still being abused. It's absolutely horrific, right? And we're the proof of that, and we're the proof of the pudding. It's like there's so many survivors out here. It's ridiculous. That's why I do these shows, and that's why I've been doing this, for like 10 years. Well, over 10 years. Like 2009, I started doing this because I realized there was so many of us out here, and I'm like, we all really need to get help and get support, and not suffer on our own, feeling like, sort of like, I want to say isolated. You know what I mean? It's no good, right? We need to get help, and I always encourage people to get help, whether it's a therapist or counselor, or if, like me, I just did group support, which I really liked, and I still do. I had 2 groups running myself, where I was just facilitating 2 groups, and so I really think it's helpful. But not everybody wants to do group support, and that's understandable. So whatever works for you, I would just say don't suffer on your own. You didn't deserve that, and you don't deserve that now. get some help. So important. So chapter 2, safety first, from this PDF. It's on the PDF. It's page 17. Introduction. Safety first important, and I always do talk about it on most of my shows when I start my shows because it's so important. If you ever listen to most of my shows there, you can see I do talk about it. So we have included this chapter at the beginning of this manual because feeling safe in your recovery should always come first. Whether you are working on step 1 or step 21, you need a framework of physical and emotional safety in order to progress in your recovery. So because child abuse at its core is about being and feeling unsafe. So people can change only from a position of safety. If you don't feel safe, then you won't progress in your recovery. So you want a strong foundation upon which to build your new self, and safety is the core of that foundation. That's so true. I talked on the last one. If you check my playlist there, I'm actually going to put these under the new playlist for this series, and I'm just calling it One Child Abuse Survivor to Another, the continuation. So that's where these videos will go. And the last video was talking about that. It's so important to get that information about safety first, because so many people, some of the groups, ASCA runs a very safe group. Most, you can attend an ASCA group anywhere online, any area, whatever. Its format is created to keep adult survivors of child abuse safe. So that's how it works, and it's really great, and that's why I like it and I trust it. If you go to some of these other groups, I'm not going to name names, but they don't use a particular format. And what happens is the survivors are sharing, and then anybody's just allowed to then, say whatever they want to that survivor, which could then end up causing that survivor to kind of, to be re-victimized. And that's just not good, right? So that's why I like the ACA. That's why I'm doing this, checking out their sharing this manual with people just to talk about it a little bit. So safety is something that you want to incorporate seamlessly into your daily life, something you approach with the same dedication as you would a spiritual or moral practice. So safety is something that you must consider no matter where you're at home, with friends, at work or play, especially at ASCA meetings. Recovery entails facing horrible memories, painful feelings, powerful bodily sensations, potentially self-destructive impulses and behaviors. It's very true. So to withstand these reactions, you need to feel safe and strong as much of the time as possible. So there are several steps involved in evaluating your current level of safety before you proceed with creating a plan for your recovery. So the remainder of this section will focus on helping you assess your strengths and weaker points so that you can move through the ASCA program from a strong place as possible, assessing and facing the risks. So this is the issue, I've talked to many survivors who, have issues with cutting and stuff like that. And, if they think about the abuse and they want to hurt themselves, I actually used to do that myself a little bit. It wasn't too serious of a problem, so I wasn't too worried about it. But I actually don't anymore because I've gone that much further, so far in my healing journey, right? But I mean, I know people who do all sorts of things like put rubber bands on their wrists so that they can snap it so they don't cut. There's different techniques. The issue is you want to be safe, and you want to have to know that if you're going to see a therapist or a counselor, or you're going to go into group support or whatever, that you're safe enough to do it. That's why many times they always say, don't do a survivor, like a healing journey on your own. Because if you're not safe enough to do that on your own, then you shouldn't be doing it on your own. It should be, you should know yourself, whether you're going to hurt yourself or whether you're going to hurt somebody else. And you need to make a clear assessment of how you're feeling and what you're going through and what you're dealing with. Because sometimes these things are just so intense, especially when you start to do the work, the actual work of looking at the abuse, which I've done all of that and talked about it. It's like, I've written poetry, I've done all sorts of things, journaled, draw pictures and scribbled, and I've written letters. I've just done so many things, in my healing journey, and it was all very helpful. But you have to make sure you're safe enough to do this stuff, right? Because you don't want to go backward in your healing journey, and you don't want to self-injure or hurt somebody else. Very, very important. So that's why they have this safety first chapter. Just so important. And yeah, I agree, Laura. I really do. Just doing the survival thing with Yeshua, Jesus, can't do it on my own. You got that right. That's that's what I do every single day. That's the only reason I'm still here. Like I said in my last video. That's the only reason I'm still here. God got a hold of me at the age of 42, so before I took my life. So I'm so happy and I'm thankful. So they said facing your abuse and reactions to it brings with it risk. So risk that you will feel overwhelmed, out of control, unable to make the right decision in any number of situations. So you can't grow without taking risks. But you won't recover if you take risks that you are not prepared for. So as part of approaching recovery from a position of safety and strength, you need to learn to distinguish between healthy and harmful risks. So they said, think of safety as an inverted U curve, with the left end of the inverted U representing total safety but no risk, and the right end of the U representing no safety, total risk. So the optimum growth point is to the right of the middle of the curve, where high safety is combined with low risk. So you always want to be conservative in balancing safety and risk because you want to avoid setbacks that may occur. When the level of risk outweighs the level of safety you feel you need, considering that many survivors have histories of self-sabotage or being re-victimized as adults, safety first means learning to take fewer risks while you create more safety for yourself. And that's just true. We got to be, we got to be always working on this stuff. If you're not in a safe place and your life right now has so many things that are, um, you know, unhealthy choices that we're making for ourselves, whatever they are. We're not safe. We need to get all that going, actually kind of first before we start working on this other stuff. Because if we're not in a sort of a safe environment, and we're sort of still maybe being abused by somebody, or we're not taking care of ourselves or whatever, then we start working on this stuff, and then it all becomes a real, like a snowball of way too much for a person to handle. You know what I mean? It all has to be done in bite-sized chunks. And basically that's what happened when I started my healing journey. That's when I started doing this blog talk radio thing, like 2009, 2010. I was doing blog talk every day. That was my healing journey. I would come on here and I'd do the work, share it with people because I'm like, I'm sharing this information, but then I would take that stuff later in the day and work through it. So it was my healing journey basically. And I would just work on manageable chunks. I never ever tried to do anything that was too overloading or too much. So I didn't work on the physical abuse, or psychological abuse, emotional abuse all at the same time. I took one and I started working on it, and that's what I worked on. And then I took, emotional abuse, and then I worked on that. And then I took sexual abuse, and I worked on that. I just couldn't manage it all at the same time. I really couldn't. And I actually saved the sexual abuse for last because I knew that was going to be the hardest for me to get through. And I knew I was going to have issues dealing with that. So I saved it for last. I worked on all the other stuff first. And it made sense to me to do that. This book was really helpful. Like I said, I started this book out right when I first started my healing journey. I think it was somebody told me about it, I'm sure, because I had some survivor friends who were helping me get information. I didn't know where to go, where to start. I was just kind of like, I have no clue, but I'm messed up. I need help. So they did. They helped me out, and that's great. So it's very difficult, these things, and we have to make sure we're safe when we're doing this. So first thing to do, I guess you could do some of this while you're working on getting yourself to a better situation. But the issue is you got to be safe in your environment, as possible, and as well as in your healing journey, because they're going to coincide. I'm thankful. I really am that I've been, as an adult, in a safe place because I gave up drug use at a very young age. Thank God. I started really young and gave it up young, and I never picked it back up. And I'm really thankful because otherwise I would have been a mess. The thing is it's so hard. It really is. And I know, it's not easy, but we need to get help. And Like two of my brothers didn't get help and they ended up killing themselves, and that's just horrific. And I know this happens to all sorts of people. And I live downtown Calgary. I see all the people out there, the drug users, the people on the street. And I just look at their lives and I'm like, man, what horrible lives they've come through, you know? And who knows what their childhood was like, but I can bet you and I can guarantee it probably wasn't that good. So this is the issue, and that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. I just keep on, sort of speaking out because I think it's just so important, right? Um, it said, besides helping you to avoid setbacks, the idea of safety first is to maximize your chances of success when you do decide to take appropriate risks so that you can begin to build success and mastery into your life. So by mastering challenges that contain some risks, you will begin to develop confidence in yourself, which in turn will enhance your self-esteem. And in other words, you want to be stretched by your recovery, but never broken. So timing is everything, they said. Recovery occurs in small, steady steps taken one after another. So each step you take needs to be reviewed, evaluated, experienced, so that you can derive maximum benefit from your hard work. Try not to be to get ahead of yourself. Many survivors feel impatient with the pace of their recovery, especially if they have been spent years feeling stuck. And you may want to jump ahead and go for the big success out of a sense of wanting to finally put the past to rest, which, seriously, that's what I wanted. It didn't happen overnight. Like I said, it took a long time. But remember, when you jump ahead before you're really ready, you sacrifice safety and risk, a setback that can leave you feeling dispirited and hopeless. Try to reassure yourself that your abuse occurred over a long period of time, important formative years, and so full recovery is also likely to take time. That's right. It takes a long time. I know survivors who've been on their healing journey for many years, and that's awesome. That's awesome, Laura. Interesting. And yeah, it's 10, 20 years later. Some of them are still on their journeys. I know others that are that made better progress. For me, I started in 2009. It's 2021. I still work on things often. I'm always working on something because I find that I'm still need work in some areas. For instance, rejection or all sorts of things, sort of self-worth, that stuff. That stuff is always the biggest challenges for me, and I do have to keep working on it. There's lots of little things got to work on. Boundaries, boundary issues are so huge, and just not being re-victimized. That's also a big one. So I don't recognize. I want to say abusive behavior so much because I grew up abused. So that's normal to me. And so when I'm around somebody who's abusive, I'm just like, well, that's what I'm used to. So I don't see it as a toxic behavior. And then it takes me a while to figure out that, wow, that's toxic, But for most people, anybody who grew up in a normal surrounding, like I was talking about the other day on my show, they would recognize that right away. And they'd be like, oh, toxic, stay away, alerts, red alert, red flags would come up. They'd be like, okay, that's totally not okay. For me, it takes me a little bit longer to figure it out because that's how I grew up. I grew up in a very toxic environment. So that's, for me, it's sort of the norm. So I'm kind of working on that, being more aware when I enter into relationships and stuff like that. And it's just important. So they said, it is very important that you set the structure and pace of your recovery. This is page 19. They said many survivors anxious to proceed with and finish their recovery often find themselves exploring recovery techniques that threaten them or make them feel re-victimized and violated. Yeah, often these survivors have had some sense that they were not yet ready to explore their abuse issues or at that particular level, but failed to trust their intuition, cautioning them to move slowly. So although it is difficult to resist a path that promises to lead to healing and recovery, we strongly encourage you to trust your own inner sense about your readiness. If you're not sure yourself whether you're ready to explore your abuse issues using particular techniques or at a different pace, see if you can get some help from a trusted friend or therapist. Ultimately, though, you must be the judge of whether you're ready for a certain recovery experience. If you have a therapist, he or she may suggest certain techniques to help you in your recovery. If you have established a consistent level of trust with your therapist, you should be able to tell him or her that you do not feel ready to try a particular technique, or that you feel the therapy is moving too fast or too slowly. An ethical therapist will never force you to do anything about which you are unsure and will respect your sense of appropriate timing. That's right. Don't let anybody push you into moving any faster than you're ready to, because that's not okay. And even in support groups, people can feel kind of rushed to go through um, portions of stuff that they're not ready to face yet. And you have to know whether you're ready to face it. People say, well, how would I know that? It's like, well, when you're looking at a particular um, issue, let's say it's emotional abuse, we'll just say, and all of a sudden we're going to start working on emotional abuse. If you're in a group and it's the topic is emotional abuse, and all of a sudden you're just feeling like, whoa, stop, hello, stop sign, then you've got to check that as, kind of keep an eye on what's going on inside. And so, you kind of recognize whether that's going to make you uncomfortable to work on that right now, or if that's going to be something that you're ready to face because you'll feel it. You'll be like, oh, yeah, I think I can handle that now. You'll know yourself, but that's where you have to get in touch with yourself. It's really, really important. You got to start watching for those signs, as signs of anxiety, signs of that's going to really make me really uncomfortable. I don't want to do that right now. And at that point, you can just ask the group moderator if you're in a group support, just say, how long are you going to be working on this particular topic? Because I'm going to skip that many weeks, because I'll work on something else that's more comfortable for me. You know what I mean? Something like that. If you have a therapist, you can just let them know that's going to be too much for me right now. I'm not able to handle that right now. And if they tell you something like, "Oh, yes, you are," you have to be the one that makes that decision, not somebody else for you. You have to be that's why I was always say on almost all my shows is you have to be your own best advocate. Because I read that somewhere. It might be in this manual somewhere. I read that and it really stuck with me because I was like, yes, that's very, very true. We need to be responsible for for ourselves, for our healing journey. I don't want somebody telling me what I need to be doing as far as my healing journey goes. That's ridiculous. So yeah, we need to be aware, and I really look for those feelings. That's why I didn't do the CSA child sexual abuse stuff till last, because I was like, that's going to have to be later after I feel better about working on some of this other stuff. I couldn't handle it all at the same time. There was no way. Just too distressing. The memories and whatnot was really hard to go through. So because this is all very, very hard stuff. That's how you get better, is working through this very, very hard stuff. And some people will never do it because it's too hard, and they just feel like they just can't. And you know what? That's a personal decision. It very well may be too hard, and maybe they just can't. That's the issue. So, because all of us are different, right? But I say, whatever you do, don't suffer on your own. Make sure you reach out, even if it's just some anonymous name on a support group on Facebook, whatever. Just make sure you do not suffer and struggle on your own, because that's just sad, right? Nobody should be struggling on their own. So assessing your current safety level, I said, before you move on to the next section of this chapter, creating your plan for safety first, we suggest that you take some time with the following two self-assessment scales: the safety checklist and the suicide harmful behavior checklist. These will help you determine your current level of safety. And after each checklist and the scoring information, there are some recommendations which are designed to help determine whether you're ready to progress with a recovery program. And I did that assessment. Like I said, I did this workbook. I did it on my own. I also did read it online. I believe I did this with One Child Abuse Survivor to Another, the journey, way back in 2010. So, or 2009, long time ago. And so I was a lot younger then. I was, I was 11 years younger than I am right now. So, I did the work, but you'd have to go back and find those. I did 680 something shows, and for the One Child Abuse Survivor to Another. And on my website, I did actually label what they are. If you really wanted to go through that stuff, which is like really, it's just as relevant as what I'm doing right here, right now. But the issue is you could get that information from my website because it's all there. And I did go through and actually write what each show was about on my website. I don't think I did it here on YouTube. I'm not sure if I put a description in there. You'd have to really look at them. It takes a long time. 683 something shows. That's a long time. I think it's 683 or something. That's a lot of shows. So I would say, um, it's just nuts. But the thing is I did actually do all that work at that time. So that's 11 years ago. And I went through and I actually printed this manual off and I went through and I wrote those questions out. I answered them. I took the assessments, just to make sure that I was safe enough to do this work. I did it myself, right? Because you have to make that choice for yourself. That's why the safety first is so important. And that's why I almost always put a graphic warning on anything I'm talking about child abuse on, because it is so serious. If you're not feeling safe enough to listen, then don't. You have to know yourself what's good for you to listen to. So it's just so important. And well, that's awesome, Laura. I appreciate that. Well, I did so many, and I was just determined to keep going as long as I could. I used to, I'd do like 2, 3 shows a day sometimes, for different things, and I was with Dreamcatchers for Abused Children at the time. And so I was also volunteering, and I was also on my healing journey. But it was very, very powerful and healing for me to be doing this, because all of a sudden I had all this support, and I thought, I'll just share this with whoever's listening. I actually used to have quite a few people listening in the chat, but over the years it sort of dropped off, and sometimes it'd be for years I'd be sitting there by myself just doing this stuff, and I was like, I didn't care because it wasn't about popularity and all this stuff. That's why this YouTube thing, it's not about being a personality on YouTube at all. It's like, I wanted to help people, and I just wanted to be a voice of encouragement for people, and also to make child abuse not such an uncomfortable topic for adult survivors, because so many people haven't talked about this stuff. They haven't heard about it, and they're suffering, and it's like, we don't have to be hiding away in shame anymore. We don't have to be hidden away anymore. I mean, some people do, because you have to be careful, right? But I'm saying you can get support. That's why my main thing was like, hey, don't suffer on your own. I did for years just struggling with this stuff. So it's so hard. And that's why I just want to be one more person out here saying, look, you deserve so much better, and you deserve to have a good life. And so do I. So let's do it. You know what I mean? And it does take work, that's for sure. So what do they say? This is a safety checklist. And there was a bunch of questions that they ask, and you have to answer yes or no when you're filling out this questionnaire. It's on page 19. It starts out saying, check yes or no to each question. 1, do you have impulses to harm yourself? Yes or no? And I would literally go through and check it off, Do you find yourself in unsafe situations? See, I used to, but that's no now, because I make much better decisions for myself nowadays. Let me tell you, I didn't used to. I used to make unsafe choices all the time. That's how I lived my life. And until, I hit my mid-20s, somewhere around there, I started to realize, no, I want to have a good life. I don't want to end up in the gutter dead from a drug overdose or killed by some sort of, drug dealer gone bad or something. I've lost friends to stuff like that. And some family members and stuff. So the thing is I didn't want that, and I changed my behavior at a young age, but I didn't do anything about my healing journey whatsoever until 42. So I just got off the drugs. But the thing is so important, So we have to answer these questions, be honest. Question number 3, do you easily feel overwhelmed by feelings, thoughts, memories, or bodily sensations? That, when I first started this, I answered yes. Now I would answer no, because 11 years later, 2009 to 20. Oh, actually, it's more than that. Let's say 2010. Oh, 12 years later. No, I am actually not overwhelmed by those things anymore. Number 4, do you currently feel threatened by someone close to you? That's a big question. Have you ever attempted suicide? Question 5. I had to answer yes. Number 6, have you ever lost time or lost sense of being yourself? That one I would answer no, because I never really ever did dissociate. A friend of mine thinks that I did dissociate as a child during CSA child sexual abuse. When that time was going on, she said, I think you did dissociate. She's a psychotherapist, and she was working with me for a couple of years. And so, but I don't feel like I've lost time, Steve. So I think I just blocked out the memories is what I did. Um, I think I just blocked it out. That's all. I didn't lose time. My sister, however, has lost her whole life because she's got no sense of who she is. She has no idea what happened. She's lost her whole entire life. She's totally dissociated. It's really sad. But she does really well, so that's fine. But the thing is she's always wondering and always confused. I think that's going to be a problem for her later. She's older than me, but the thing is eventually it hits you. It hits hard. It's good to get help. I've always encouraged even my sister to get help, and she won't do it. Number 7, do you use alcohol or drugs to excess? I would say no. I don't drink or do drugs. I don't even really allow myself to drink because I have an addiction problem. I used to be a major drug addict, so I know for sure. Yeah, once in a while I have a glass of wine, but the thing is I never drank heavily because I wasn't into alcohol. I was into drugs, and so I never liked alcohol. It didn't have an attraction for me, so it was never a problem for me. I could even work in a pub and all the alcohol and booze around there. I'm like, whatever. I don't care about alcohol, but get me around drugs. That's a different story. So I've got alcohol. I've got a drug addiction problems. So alcohol was never a problem. Drug use, yes. So I don't allow myself to do any of that stuff. I'll be honest. I smoke cigarettes because that's kind of the only thing that I do that I've held on to. Just can't seem to get rid of, and I'm always trying to quit. But my friends would tell you, they'd be like, she's always trying to quit. It's because I need to quit. But that's my habit. I'm still doing it, and I drink coffee. So, I figure, well, that's better than what I was doing before. So, much better. It's still bad. So they said, is there a firearm or other potentially dangerous weapon at your residence? That's question 8. No. I would say nope. Number 9, have you been victimized by someone within the last 3 years? That's a big question. I would say no. 10, is someone close to you involved in illegal activities? That's another question. No. This is scoring. If you check yes to more than 3 questions, your current risk level is high. So out of those 10 questions, if you checked yes to more than 3, then your risk level is high. That's amazing. Right? I had a couple there, 2. So back when I first started this, it was roughly about the same. And I think I had 3 or something instead of 2. Or 3 or 4 or something like that. So I don't know. It wasn't all that high. But the thing is we do need to make sure that we're in a safer environment. You want to be safe, right? Like, so this is the issue. When you're working on your healing journey, you know, you need to work on getting yourself to a safe environment as well, because it's the only way it's going to work. You know what I mean? It's no good to work on this, on this healing journey, going through this horrible stuff, trying to heal from it, while you're still kind of in a dangerous situation. It doesn't work, right? It's almost like system overload. It's too much, and it almost then pushes you back down further than you would have been before. You know what I mean? So the whole idea of the healing journey is to get better, not to get worse. So if you're not ready to start a healing journey, then you have to ask your question, am I really ready to start a healing journey right now? That's a big deal. And if not, and you can even talk to some, online counselors or therapists or whatever who offer free consultations, and just say, what do I do? I don't even think I'm ready to start my healing journey. It's very stressful. They might have some suggestions for you. You know what I mean? On what you can do. I know for myself, I didn't have a lot of money to buy books. But I did have the internet. So I started looking around for all sorts of information because I'm kind of a reader. I read all the time anyways. You can tell I've got books all over the place. I'm into the Bible. That's what I'm into. I don't push it here on my one job use Survivor to another stuff. The issue is that's what I'm doing. I'm studying. I'm working on a Bachelor of Ministry, actually. We're finishing it up. So I study all the time. But the thing is, I study other stuff too. And I study child abuse information. And I didn't have money for books, a lot of money for books, especially 11 years ago when I started this. So I got online and started looking around. I found so much good information. And that's what I was sharing on my show. So, I just did it because I wanted to share hope with people, that we don't have to continue to spiral down. We don't have to be destroyed by this. We deserve so much better. we do deserve so much better now. And I mean, it's really, truly, like I always say, up to us, um, whether we're going to be able to heal from this stuff or we're not. And the reason I say that is because we have to do the work, and it's a lot of work. No matter what your situation is, it doesn't matter what type of abuse it is. Abuse is very damaging. Any type of abuse, it's hard to get through. It doesn't matter what kind it is. Some people, I see some people say, "Oh, well, my abuse wasn't as bad as yours." But the thing is you can't compare abuse because it doesn't work that way. You know what I mean? Um, Trauma is trauma, and there's no comparing it. They say child abuse is compared to being a vet like a war veteran. It's the same thing, right? You can't really compare. Oh, my abuse was worse than yours, or somebody else was worse than mine. I always kind of sometimes say, well, some people have gone through a lot more than I have. But the thing is abuse just hurts, and we don't have to suffer through that for the rest of our lives. We really don't. My mother could have got help. My mom was abused as a child, and she never got help. She had been offered help many, many times, um, and she wanted help. You know what I mean? Like she wanted help. She would cry, "Oh, I've got no help," you know. But she was abused severely as a child. That's why she did what she did to me. I know that's why, because she could not. She was really messed up, you know. But the thing is then she was in this abusive marriage with my dad. But the thing is she could have got help. Social services stepped in. They were busted and arrested on child abuse charges. They said, you guys need counseling. You need marital counseling, but you also need counseling for your own issues, because both of my parents were abused. So they didn't get help. They just wanted to continue living this abusive lifestyle. See, so it's truly up, and that's what I saw the whole time I was growing up being abused. And I'm like, you know what? You didn't even try to get help. And so I didn't either till the age of 42. And then I sat on the couch and I was like, what am I doing? I am so messed up because of what somebody did to me years ago. Why am I not reaching out for help? That's insane. You know what I mean? Like, to continue living in this situation the way which wasn't going to happen very much longer because I was going to take my life. And I'm like, you know what? No, I'm going to get help. And so that's why I say to people, if you're struggling and you just don't know what you're going to do, and we've only got a couple of minutes left here, you need to make the best decision you could ever make, and that's just to raise your hand and say, I need help. And don't stop raising it, and don't stop saying you need help until you get some help. It's just so important. Don't let yourself be destroyed. And I'm glad, let me tell you, to be on this side of it, but it was a hard road. And like I said, whatever avenue you decide to go through, therapy, counselor, group support, whatever it is, anonymous group support, just make sure that you do get some help, right? So important. And Laura says, we chose differently. Hallelujah. That's right. That's right. Well, this is the thing. I mean, I just give, like I said, I don't really share much of my Christian walk on one child abuse survivor to another. You can see my biblical videos if you want to. They're there. I've got like healing word of life and all sorts of stuff there. It's all biblical material. But I keep this very separate for a reason, because I know so many people are angry at God. I know I was. I actually hated God for a while when I was a teenager. And I pushed him out of my life completely until I was 42. So he got a hold of me, and I was like, I'm thankful. I'm so thankful. And oh, hi, Charmaine. How are you? I didn't see you had popped in here. And it's so nice for you all to be here with me, to join me. We'll pick up this next part next week, next Tuesday. And you can get this, like I said, from their website for free. We're looking at page 20, and we're going to look at the recommendation section of that. Or did we just finish that? Okay, no, the next one up is the suicidal harmful behavior checklist. But you can get that yourself. You don't need to wait for me. If you are interested in this Survivor to Thriver workbook manual, you don't have to wait for me to come on here and talk about this stuff. You can actually go get this yourself and read it, or if you don't want to download it, read it online, whatever, check it out, see if it's going to be something that's going to help you out. Because you don't want to waste your time. Right? I don't want you to waste your time. So because it's going to be a little slow going through this, right? So that's what we're going to do. And it's I got about a minute left. I just want to wish you a wonderful day. Take care of yourself. What I do, I'll do some self care today. I'll do some breathing work. Just breathe, breathe, breathe in love. Exhale, sorrow, whatever is going on in my life. And I'll do some, just being good to myself all day. I'm not, I do actually treat myself really well. And that's because I just went through so much as a child. I take the time to be good to myself and, think about great things and lovely things. I don't just sit around thinking about depressing stuff all the time. And, I'm really into, like flowers and things like that. I'm such a girl, right? It's like you wouldn't know it by looking at me, but the thing is I have that. That's the little girl that I am. I allow her to exist now, and she's actually getting much better. All those wounded parts of myself, right? So that's what I would wish for you. That your day would just be full of love, full of self care, and you're just going to do something nice for yourself and treat yourself well and be good to yourself. Be kind to yourself. Be good to others around you. Don't take any more abuse from anybody. Just don't allow it in your life. Take really good care until the next time, everybody. I'm glad you could be here. Thank you so much. I'm still trying to answer comments, which I'm going to be doing. So, because I want to answer every single comment that's on there, because I really appreciate everybody who's taking the time to comment on my stuff and to watch my stuff. Thank you so much. And like I said, take good care and see you next time.